Hello guys and welcome to today's lesson. On today's lesson we will learn about control flow in Python, and in Python we use three keywords. So a keyword is a word that is reserved in Python, right? You cannot have a variable named after that word. So let's say that if you want to say you want a variable to have the name, I don't know, if, you cannot do that, right? It will say that that's an error, and you can see that it's already an error. So the keywords are reserved for Python, and you cannot name variable or anything after them. So Python uses three keywords for control flow. Those are if, else, and elif. The elif is translated to else if, but it's, let's say you like it's much shorter, and both of them are concatenated. And each of those words mean exactly what they mean in English. If it's if, and else it's, else or otherwise. Now, before we start to see some examples, I want you guys to know a few more things. One of them is that there are some Boolean variables. Those Boolean variables have two values. That values are true and false. True is equal to 1 and false is equal to 0. You need to remember this because in your exam you will have questions where you will be asked if true or false exists in your code. And this true or false will be sometimes in words or sometimes in ones and zeros. So you have to remember that true equals 1 and false equals 0. Now, let us continue and let's see some examples. For example, let's take a variable called score. And score has the value of 35. Now, let us see if the score is smaller than 21. Let's see if the score is smaller than 21. In other programming languages, you have something like this. Those are called brackets. But in Python, you don't have brackets, you have indentation, which will be delimited like this. You will put two dots and then enter, and here you have a tab, right? There's here it's a tab, right? And based on the tab, you will know which code that specific zone is tied to. Now, this is called scope, right? And in here, let's say you want to print that is smaller than 21. Now, if we run this code, it will not print anything because my score is greater than 21. So let us put here like 7. And 7 is smaller than 21. Now let us add an elif. So as we said earlier, it's an else, and if it's a condition. And let's say the score is, I don't know, greater than 67, right? And we print is greater. Now this code will not execute because the first part, it's because first of all it's smaller than, it's 7, so it's clearly much smaller than 67, and the first part will catch this, so this will execute first and this will not execute at all. Now let us run and see that exactly this happens. So let us modify this and let's put something, let's say 77. Now, if we run it, you will see that it is greater. And in the end, let us close with something like else print done. Now, the print done here will execute only if all of those failed. So let us see. It will fail if it is smaller than 21, and it will fail it will fail. It will fail if it is greater than 67. So 22, it will probably do the trick because it's greater than this and it's smaller than this. So if we run it, it will have done. Good. Now I will let you guys know another thing, and that is in Python there is a variable called none, right? So let's say we have a var example and we call it none, right? None is when you have a variable but you don't know what type is it. As you remember, Python is dynamically typed, which means that it will not uh, you will not need to specify what type of variable it is. So if you specify that it is none, you will say that that variable exists and but it has no value. Like it exists, but it kind of doesn't. It's some sort of a placeholder, like hey, you have this box is empty, but you don't know exactly where it is or something like that. So in this situation, what you can do is check if the variable, right, will exist or not. So you can type it's different than none and then print is different, right? Now let us see if this will work. It will not work because it is equal to none, so this is not going to print. So what we can do is just simply give it a value. Let's say it's 8, and if we run it, you will say that it is different. But another thing is that, as you can see, PyCharm says here that this comparison with none perform with equality operators, right? We can just simply do something like this. And by default, Python will check if this variable is exists, if this variable exists, right? If it's different than none. And let us see, and it is different, right? So this checks if the variable exists, right? So if you put none and we run it, you will see that this will be no different. So let us do some exercises and see how we can learn to use control flow much better and in more complex programs.